Hey folks, Valentin the Mad here, and today we'll be looking at the vehicle damage in BeamNG. So, this game is the absolute king in this aspect. That was the case when it was initially released, and currently it very much remains so. In this video, we'll be looking into the why, as well as a few points of feedback where the game could use some improvements. Also, this video was voted on by Patreon supporters and channel members. Supporters of all tiers get videos like this one a week early, and anyone on the voted tier and above can also vote on future videos. I haven't done votes in a long while, but I am planning to be doing them much more often, so consider joining, that does very much help out. Now, to the video. The big feature in our aspect is the car deformation. You have many games nowadays featuring solid body physics, but none that I'm aware of have them as accurate and as detailed as we have here. Whether it is something mild or a massive, devastating crash. The results you'll be getting are incredibly realistic. There is a good reason you have videos comparing BeamNG to real crash tests, and while there will be some limitations here and there, what we have here is quite mind-blowing. It's the attack of beams and nodes on each car, different material types reacting properly, but I figure there's also a ton of very fine tuning to get those to feel just right, which, as I mentioned, they are very successful with. A kind of related thing I want to note, you don't have dynamic tearing for the metal parts, but there is a calculated clipping through for something like a pole or a tree impact. Can deliver some very cool results and even kind of impalement. And for tires, they are divided into sections and those can be torn off. It is pretty cool feedback for when they are damaged in a particularly bad impact. Speaking of stuff coming off, another major factor here is the detachables. So, there's the usual stuff we have in most games, like bumpers, doors, hoods and such. Less common things like the side panels, and then we have the stuff I think we haven't seen anywhere, like entire headlights breaking off, at times dangling, but more importantly, the body coming off the frame. I do remember seeing that happen for the first time. The wow factor was really something else. As you can imagine, it will happen only when a very appropriate amount of force is applied. They haven't forgotten the unibody construction too. The response for that is also very cool. Now there is room to improve this aspect. There could be more detachables, the lack of debris is one of the points of feedback, more on that soon, but as you can see, this part of the game is also quite exceptional. A way to support the channel is the Bila Konjenka artwork store. The art is by my mom, I'm handling the fulfillment, and the featured painting in this video is an 86 Corvette. We got a crazy cool reference photo for this one, in the sunset, in a beautiful location, with the headlights raised. The painting came out quite beautiful. We have quite a bit of other car paintings too. Modern ones, classics, local first responders. I took the reference photo for this one in a real crime scene. And yeah, that is a way to get cool art and support the channel. Links are in the description. Kind of obvious, but I'll still mention, the damage will affect the handling. The game is a car simulation, simulating pretty much literally all of the various parts and systems, and, as you can imagine, damage to those is very much taken into account. In my experience in the game though, what will screw you up most often is not so much damage to the engine, transmission or the electrical systems, but rather damage to the axis or the wheel area, which will very physically just jam some part up, making their top speed be very low if you can even keep going. Now as for some points of feedback. The biggest issue for me personally is the lack of debris. You have the detachables, but that is literally it. Other than those, the crash sites will be entirely clean. Now as you could see in the intro, there actually are debris sprites spawned on the impact, but I think those just go right through the ground. Perhaps an initial improvement could be just spawning a bit more of them, making them freeze after they finally land in place and giving players the option to let them stay, but it really could use a better, proper debris system. Another limitation is the lack of scratches. There is basically nothing on the cars for this kind of a contact, and that will feel underwhelming. Now, in modern engines, there is a cool option to basically paint damage on characters and objects. I've covered that quite a bit on the channel, and it sounds like it should be useful for scratches, maybe even mud, but it isn't clear whether the engine here can support this feature. And lastly, there is no visualization for leaking fluids. At the moment, you can see leakage only in the UI. Just like us, cars can bleed, only in a different color, so spilling, puddling and all of that is very much needed here too. In the bottom line, what makes it stand out? In my opinion, primarily two things. The level of detail in the deformation. Many games feature soft body physics, but none that I'm aware of deliver this degree of realistic results. And the consequences for the damage. It is a car simulator. It isn't made to be a balanced racing game, so even a relatively mild impact that hits at the right spot can put a car out of commission. With those combined, you get the kind of game where a glorious crash will feel far more satisfying than just winning a race. As for the game destruction aside, overall, I think it is a very fun experience. The handling feels great, I'm using the keyboard, perfectly enjoyable, there's a good variety of cars, a variety of large open locations, mod support, and you have a great degree of freedom to mess around and test the car damage out. But there is one big issue at the moment I'm making this video, and that is the very lacking AI. I think to pinpoint the main problem is that it is very scripted and there is very little variety in its behavior. It's the kind of thing you gotta play for yourself to really see what I mean, but the result is that there is very little replay value in the races. As I mentioned, it just feels very samey every time. It is quite a big issue and, at the moment, in my opinion, it is the main thing in a game that needs a major improvement. And I know, infinitely way easier said than done, but I think this will very much be worth it. Even with this in mind, the game is still a very enjoyable experience. There's a lot of fun to be had here and, as I mentioned at the beginning, it is the king of car damage at the moment. That is it for this one. Do let me know how you feel in the comment section and subscribe for more content coming your way soon. Until next time.